Hello, this is Shan Chandrasekar welcoming you to another delightful part of our programming. We have an extremely distinguished guest in the studio here with us today. We are very honored to welcome Honourable Jason Kenney, Canada's Minister for Citizenship, Immigration and Multiculturalism. Jason, it's an absolute pleasure to have you in the program.
It's my honor to be here, Shan. Thank you very much.
Well, Jason, we've been watching you. You're one of the most eloquent spokesmen, one of the finest Canadians, I should say, that we should all be very proud of. Your accomplishments have been impeccable, and I've heard you speak in public forums. You're an extremely eloquent speaker. Your economic action plan. Tell me about the outcome of this. From what I understand, you've created something like over 450,000 jobs.
Well, as you know, Canada suffered in the global economic downturn 2008 and 2009, which was the worst economic recession since the 1930s in the Western world. And it started in the United States because about 40% of our economy is dependent on export to the United States. It inevitably affected Canada. But thanks to the hard work and innovation of the Canadian private sector and a sound public policy environment that our government helped to create, we got through that recession better than any other major developed economy in the world. It was a shorter recession and a shallower recession than in the United States, Europe, and in other developed countries. We came out of it before any other major developed country, and since then, over the past year and a half, we've seen the creation of, you're quite right, about 460,000 net new jobs, and those are increasingly private sector full-time jobs. For the first time, we see a rate of unemployment in Canada that's substantially, durably lower than in the United States. Our economy is getting more competitive. We have low interest rates. We have the lowest federal tax burden since the mid-1960s. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank project that Canada will have the strongest economic growth in 2011 and 2012. So there's great reason for optimism. And again, while we give credit to people like you, the entrepreneurs who take risks and invest in our economy, we think that prudent tax relief, prudent fiscal policy, strong regulation of the financial sector, and strategic investments that we made during the downturn have contributed to the strong economic performance of our country. And you know, there's a lot of statistics there. What does the bottom line mean? More good jobs for Canadians to take care of their families. That's what it's all about.
It's incredible. I understand you've also made some very interesting tax reforms. You know, you lowered the GST, you lowered several other taxes. There's been a few other tax cuts from what I understand. And the total is, from what I heard, was little over 100 different cuts.
Yeah, that's right.
Areas.
About 120 separate tax cuts over the past 5 years. Collectively, that represents or amounts to about $220 billion in cumulative tax relief over the course of 5 years, which amounts to about a $3,000 tax break for the average family of four. The highest profile one was the cut in the GST from 7% to 5%, because that helps everyone, whether they are low-income people, working families, everyone benefits from that. But also income splitting for seniors, help for families with children, and as well tax relief for job creators. Sometimes in politics, it's easy to, people are tempted to bash businesses as though they can somehow be taxed to pay for everything. But the reality is, businesses pass their tax burden onto their consumers in the form of higher prices, or their employees in the form of lower salaries and benefits. So we want to create jobs by stimulating the job creators, the businesses, small, medium, and large-sized businesses that create jobs every day. And that's why our focus now is on continued tax relief for the job creators in the business sector to make our economy more competitive. Look, Canada used to be one of the toughest places in the developed world to invest in terms of high taxes, tariffs, red tape, and regulation. Now we are emerging, according to all of the experts, as one of the leading magnets for international investment. Yours is an Asian television network, broadcasts all around the world, has a large South Asian clientele in particular. We see the emergence of South Asia, of India in particular, in the world economy. We want to attract more of that investment here. It'll be easier to do with the lower business tax rate.
Interesting. You just touched on the childcare and special taxes dealing with families with children. Elaborate a bit more on that.
Well, one of the things we've done is to give respect to parents. We believe there's a philosophical difference. Some in politics believe that the state should tax people, take people's money away from them, churn it through the bureaucracy, and then pay for childcare, for example, run by government bureaucrats. We take a different approach. We believe that every family is different. They have their own unique approach and their own unique challenges, and their choices should be respected. Now, many families choose to have one of the parents at home, part-time or full-time, to take care of little kids. Or they bring grandparents, especially in the South Asian community, bring in grandparents, aunties and uncles to help take care of children. We say when that happens, we should value that, and that's why we've given every family $100 a month for every child under 6 to help them make their childcare choices, rather than saying you'll only get that benefit if you take the child to a government-run daycare center. So it's a philosophical difference, but fundamentally, as Prime Minister Harper has said, we believe that the best childcare experts are called mom and dad.
That's lovely. On your own portfolio, you've got 3 of the most important portfolios in our opinion in this country. You're a senior cabinet minister with immigration, citizenship, and multiculturalism, right, all combined together. And frankly, it makes a lot of sense to combine these 3 together because they're definitely very interrelated. Several years ago, they were somewhat compartmentalized and there were different people handling different portfolios, and it's wonderful that you brought them all under one umbrella. Among them, you made some radical changes and important decisions. One of them was to deal with immigration fraud. You've really addressed it. You came out straight and you handled it. RCMP has done some fantastic, raids, with respect to some of these, issues, and you've supported them. You've been quite vociferous about that, especially people who have been abusing the system, where they live elsewhere, but they just have a fake address in Canada. A lot of that is being cleaned up. Tell us about this.
Big issue for me, Chan, because there are really 2 kinds of fraud that we're trying to fight. First, let me say that Canada, we are proud that Canada is the most open and generous country in the world with respect to immigration. We receive more newcomers than any other country in the world. Here's a bit of a scoop. It's not out officially yet, but last year, 2010, we landed about 282,000 permanent residents, the largest number of immigrants coming to Canada in post-war, in 70 years, since the Second World War.
Congratulations. Well,
and that's a reflection of the unique openness of Canada. We're also increasing the number of UN refugees who we bring to this country. So we have nothing to apologize for in terms of our openness to immigration. But if we're going to maintain public support for robust levels of immigration, we need to demonstrate that there is fairness in the system, that it's governed by the rule of law and fairness, and that's what we're trying to do. So, as you know, abroad, both here and abroad, there is a disturbing underground industry. I call them crooked consultants, people who will sell people advice on how to cheat the immigration system. They will sell them fake documents, fake birth certificates, fake bank transcripts, travel itineraries, college acceptance letters, death certificates, you name it.
Wow.
In certain countries, you can go into that market and buy those documents to create a fake application for a visa or immigration to Canada. And often here in Canada, those crooked consultants will advise people to make false asylum claims in our refugee system, which is a fundamental abuse of Canada's generosity. Similarly, Canada has the easiest process for immigrants to become citizens of any major developed democracy in the world, which is why about 85% of our permanent residents go on to become citizens. But there too, you find an underground industry facilitating bogus citizenship applications. We have brochures and flyers of people in certain countries advertising that for a $5,000 payment to a crooked consultant, they'll get you citizenship. You don't actually have to live in Canada. Your kids will get subsidized tuition rates. You'll get free health care. You can bring your parents. I mean, this is outrageous. If we want to maintain the openness and generosity of this country, we must crack down on the abuse of its generosity by these people. That's why we've brought in the Cracking Down on Crooked Consultants Act. I'm in the process of identifying a new regulator for consultants. We're going to make it a criminal offense to act as an immigration consultant if you're not a licensed member of the regulatory body in good standing. We're doing the same for citizenship consultants. We've prioritized enforcement against immigration fraud in the RCMP and the Canada Border Services Agency. And finally, I've gone overseas to India, China, Philippines and elsewhere, and have asked those governments to work with us in combating fraud in their own jurisdictions, and we're getting very positive results from that.
Interesting. You just talked about your trip to India, China, and the Far East for that matter. So tell me about the focus of your trip to India. What exactly was the purpose of your trip in terms of visiting India? You know, because from what I heard, you had some very positive results, I believe, and you had a lot of collaborations as well that you had talked about.
Well, we have been lobbying the Indian government for some time to bring in a stronger law against fraud in immigration. And when I was there, I met with the foreign minister, I met with security minister Chandrasekar, I met with the minister for overseas Indian affairs, and they all committed that in early 2011, the Lok Sabha will bring forward a bill recommended by the cabinet of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to make it to clarify that it's a crime to provide these kinds of fraudulent immigration services for students or anyone else seeking to leave India. So this is going to be very helpful. The police services in places like Mumbai and Delhi have been quite helpful to us when we've gone to them and say, here's a dossier of a fraudster operating in your city who has sold fake Canadian passports or fake Canadian job offers, what have you. That we have found the police in those areas have been quite alert, gone in and arrested people, laid charges. We've had, quite frankly, some greater challenges up in Punjab, which is why I visited for the second time in 18 months Chief Minister Bodal Singh in Chandrasekar, and I presented him with some very compelling evidence of outrageous acts by fraudsters. We have, just to give you one example, a man in Jalandhar who was selling, who's a crooked immigration consultant. He was taking cash money, several thousand Canadian dollars, from students who wanted to come to Canada. Well, he then produced fraudulent documents that he submitted in their applications. We therefore have to reject these applications. And then the student is put on a blacklist for 2 years for the ability to get a visa to come to Canada, but he's got the cash in hand. He developed fraudulent bank statements and everything. So we went to the Chief Minister and said, we need action on this. He said, I will put the Director General of Punjab State Police in charge. We will pursue these investigations. 2 weeks after I left India, this man was arrested. So we'd like to think that we are making progress in cooperation with the local police, even in Punjab, where there have been some more significant challenges.
We're doing a television special with Honourable Jason Kenney. There's more to come on the program. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're doing a television special with Honourable Jason Kenney. Welcome back. Jason, I have a pleasant surprise for you. There are many people who, prior to election, there is one aspect, and the moment you get elected, you're not really accessible to the community. But I have to admire you. You've made yourself really accessible to the community across the country. You've visited many multicultural organizations and their functions. You've participated in very, important ceremonies for that matter, huge population. Yeah. People have had a chance to at least see you, interact with you, they've heard you. I've got a little montage. I want you to watch Jason Kenney in action in different parts of our community across this country.
Okay.
Let's take a look at it.
So this is an important, indeed an historic announcement that we are making here today. We all know that for the more than 250,000 newcomers who arrive as new permanent residents to Canada every year, they come here with a sense of hope, of expectation, and a dedication to work hard to build a bright future for them and their families. But we know that too many of them have found themselves locked out of economic opportunity in the regulated professions for a number of reasons and for a long period of time. And our government is absolutely focused on doing what it takes to improve economic outcomes.
As Minister of Citizenship, Immigration and Multiculturalism, I am proud to be here this afternoon representing a government that is committed to strengthening pluralism and multiculturalism and promoting and upholding our core Canadian values of freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. And we are all here today unified as Canadians, focused on building this country as a land of opportunity for our children and grandchildren. We heard frustration from many of the witnesses tonight about how there appears to be little or no sanction or punishment or justice for those who abuse the privilege of coming to Canada as a spouse. I understand their frustration. I've asked them to understand that in this country with the Charter of Rights and the rule of law, once someone has the legal status of a permanent resident as a sponsored spouse, it then becomes very difficult for us to revoke that and to deport them from the country, because we have a cumbersome legal process. We have to be able to prove in a court of law that the person entered into the marriage with bad intent, and that's not easy to do. And so our ministry so far has been putting its emphasis on identifying fake marriages before they are approved for sponsorship and before they are landed as permanent residents in Canada. I do acknowledge, certainly after having heard stories tonight, that more can and must be done on the enforcement side to follow up on credible proof, credible evidence of fraudulent spousal sponsorships so that action can be taken, because it is a criminal offense under the Immigration Act to lie.
Namaste, namaskar, sat sri akal. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. We've had excellent speeches. I won't add one, except to say, Diwali lak lak vadanya. In Canada, sometimes we think we invented multiculturalism. India had multiculturalism long before Canada.
Congratulations, Jason.
Thank you very much, Shan.
Yeah. Jason, I have another surprise for you as well.
Yes, go ahead.
You're very passionate when it becomes a speech, for that matter, especially about the government, about Canada, about what the country's accomplishments are, and how proud you are as a Canadian. I want you to watch a little glimpse of that with me.
Oh, no.
Okay, let's watch this.
It is an honor for me to have him here tonight and to introduce to you my colleague, my friend, the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, the Honourable Jason Kenney.
My dear friend, Lois, I'm so thrilled to be here. I remember attending a nomination meeting, but now we're in the midst of the rubber is hitting the road. Every single day we're out there launching new projects to improve our infrastructure, to invest in our long-term productivity, to also stimulate the economy as we pull out of the downturn. We're in the midst of this, and they all of a sudden say they want to stop the progress.
It's working.
That's the problem. That's the problem. They're afraid that their concern is that the economy actually is recovering, and the opposition and the Liberal Party is concerned that Canadians are going to favorably review the positive economic leadership of this government. And I say what they are doing is totally irresponsible.
Jason, so tell me, how do you structure your time? Because, as a successful politician, you're under so much pressure as a cabinet minister. Everybody needs you at all the times.
Yeah.
So how do you, spread yourself, because you're in Calgary one day, you're in Montreal another day, you're in Ottawa another day?
It is the most difficult part of the job, and I wish we could say I was spreading myself thin, but I'm not. To the contrary, my nickname in the cabinet is the Minister for Curry in a Hurry, because they see me going to 3 or 4 events every night on the weekends, and sometimes, some weekends I've been known to do 20 or 25 community events. I think it's so important for someone in my position in particular to be accessible, as you say. And frankly, one of the reasons I've been an activist Minister of Immigration, one of the reasons I've been willing to take on some of these really tough issues, like fixing the problems in our refugee system, cracking down on human smuggling, and we think improving the selection of immigrants to coming to Canada. For example, we have much better distribution of newcomers. They're going all across Canada, not just Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. So there's a lot of policy work I've been doing, but that has quite honestly been informed by my contact with literally tens of thousands of primarily new Canadians through the hundreds of events that I've been able to attend over the past few years. So I think it's very important. The way I describe it to my colleagues and to the Prime Minister, I'm sort of in a non-stop focus group or public meeting with new Canadians. And our MPs do this as well, of course, in their own constituencies. But it gives me a very unique perspective on the challenges that newcomers face in integration in Canada. They come here with a work effort, with a work ethic, with a desire to succeed, play by the rules, and they come up against so many barriers. Credential recognition for the foreign trained professionals, the problem of lack of Canadian experience in getting their first or second job, sometimes language difficulties and other challenges. And this is really, my interaction with new Canadians has caused me to focus all of my efforts on faster and more successful integration, more and better jobs, and a better standard of living for newcomers. And that's really what my focus is.
It's interesting. You just mentioned about human smuggling, for that matter. The status of refugees you mentioned as well. Now, the concept, the refugee, the whole aspect about refugees is an extremely sensitive area. My understanding is that you're not against refugees seeking asylum in this country, but you're against middlemen exploiting them in terms of becoming human smugglers, I presume.
Yes.
Is that
yes.
what? Okay.
Well, we're against both immigrants who, would-be immigrants, who aren't prepared to wait in line to come the legal way, making up a story about persecution to come as false refugees. Now, over 60% of those who make a claim for asylum in Canada as refugees are determined by our very generous and fair legal system to be false refugee claimants. And that means there are tens of thousands of people clogging up our legal system because they're seeking, maybe a crooked consultant or a friend told them this was the fastest way to get into Canada, or maybe they're in Canada illegally. And they decide, well, they're going to try to get status by going through the asylum system, even though they're not victims of persecution. You know what that does? That devalues and undermines our tradition of refugee protection. This country was built in part by refugees. The United Empire Loyalists who fled the American Revolution and founded English Canada, the Highland Clearance Scots and Potato Famine Irish and others were today what we would call refugees. But And so we have a proud tradition of that. In fact, we welcome more refugees to Canada per capita than any other developed country. And I've increased the target by 20%, the number of refugees, like, for example, Iraqi Christians who've been bombed out of their homes, the people from tribes in Burma who have been forced out of that country by the junta that we've received 5,000 of. Going forward, we'll be receiving 14,000 refugees like that every year. So we have nothing to apologize for in terms of our tradition, our policy of protection for victims of persecution. But we need to say to those who would abuse our generosity, either by paying human smugglers or by coming and making a fake refugee claim, that this will not be accepted. We must defend the fairness of the immigration system, and those who seek to come in through the back door who don't need our protection should be sent packing without too much time. They should be sent packing in a few months, as quickly as our legal system can deal with them.
You've been involved in human rights, in the sense there was a government subcommittee, if I remember right. You were the chairman. You were the chair of that committee on international, human rights. Tell us about your role in that.
This is really the heart of my political vocation, I would say. The reason I'm in politics is because of my belief in human dignity. I started a human rights group on my high school campus. I've always been involved in the Tibetan issue, in other issues, particularly concerned about the persecution of religious minorities. And so I've always hoped to be able to use my position in government to advance those convictions, and I think we've done so. Just to give you a couple of examples, I was proud to be very involved in having our government grant honorary Canadian citizenship to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is, of course, a great champion of human dignity, religious freedom, and human rights. And in fact, I just announced a special program at his request to welcome some 1,000 Tibetan refugees who have been living in the Himalayan region of northern India in AP province to come to Canada.
Wonderful.
Similarly, I'm very alert to the concerns of persecuted religious minorities. And when we see, for example, what's happening to some of the people in Iraq facing terrible violence, we've opened the doors of Canada. We'll be accepting 20,000 of those refugees. So this has always been a constant theme in my political vocation, and I hope it will continue to be. Sometimes it's not always easy or convenient. Sometimes you ruffle some feathers, but you know what? It's worth doing.
That's interesting. You've been the president and chief executive officer of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation.
Yeah.
So tell me about that role and your experience there.
Boy, you know everything about my background. This is you're a great interviewer, Chan. I will say that I was when I left college. I was keen to get involved in helping Canadian society, and the opportunity came along to help start the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. So I was there at the very early stages of that organization. It's a very important voice, because there are hundreds, thousands of organizations asking governments to spend more money, but there was actually no organization representing the interests of the people who have to pay for it. Now, of course, we need social services and roads, we need public services, but we also need a balance. We also need to respect the interests and rights of the people who work so hard. And this is what really impassions me when I meet especially new Canadians who came here with very little, maybe their life savings, but a determination to work hard, and they end up starting a small business. They pour everything into it. And you know these families, they work 7 days a week, 12, 14, 16 hours a day. Their kids come from after school to help their parents in the restaurant, in the dry cleaning shop, in the small business. And these are the people that pay the taxes. And there's no special interest group out there looking out for their interests. When the government comes down and raises the taxes on that business or on that family, that means maybe they won't be able to afford a vacation that year. Maybe it means they won't be able to afford new clothes for their children. Maybe it means they'll have to fire someone who's working for them in their business. The taxes, yes, are the necessary price to pay for public services, but they can also have a destructive impact on the real creators of our economy, the people who go out there and work hard every single day to create wealth, to create jobs, to take care of their own families through a sense of personal responsibility. So really, my involvement in the Taxpayers Federation was just to say to politicians, just a minute, before you continue to put more and more of a burden on those families and those job creators, think about the impact on them. Don't just listen to the noisy special interests who will always be demanding higher taxes and more spending.
Jason, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you in the program with us.
And it's my honor. Congratulations to you on your honorary doctorate, on your membership in the Broadcasting Hall of Fame, and all you've done to give real expression to Canada's tradition of multiculturalism. You know, we talk about multiculturalism. You do it every single day here through the service that you provide, bringing the world to Canada through this network. Congratulations, and thank you for all that you've done.
Thanks very much, Jason.
Cheers.
Coming from you, that's a true compliment.
Thank you.
Wish you all the best, and God bless you. And we look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
I hope so.